This image isn't from a Simpsons episode. Despite being one of the hardest pictures ever created by mankind, this isn't a screen cap, but rather a promotional image. A drawing created specifically for advertising sent out to press outlets, like magazines and online news sites. They've mostly been phased out in animation in favor of key art that can be cropped into a poster, but The Simpsons has had them since day one. They're a forgotten part of the legacy behind hundreds of episodes. Like, I was surprised how many I hadn't seen just when surfing through the season pages on one of the Simpsons wikis. Yes, there's more than one Simpsons wiki. They're beefin'. Choose your side. Many of these pieces have the duty of summing up an entire episode in just one image. In over nearly 35 years, their style and approach has changed, often in ways that don't quite reflect the look of what they're advertising. I won't be covering any of the general publicity artwork here. That feels like its own nearly infinite rabbit hole, and comparatively, most of the promos have been archived in decent quality. Besides, the Marge Simpson Playboy piece could just be its own video. First things first, these ads are kind of a mystery since the artist names are never included when they're published, as either Fox or their press room are the only ones credited. I've been able to ID a few by Julius Priate and Bill Morrison via crew members on Twitter or through interviews, as both are known for creating promotional art for decades, like magazine or comic covers. Sometimes an artist's own style comes through in the drawing, like when Morrison drew Homer yelling in the early days. Let me know if you can find credit for any other members of the licensing team, and know that doesn't include Matt Groening. His signature is only on these because it has to be. He couldn't have drawn everything I'm showing here because I'm pretty sure he hasn't seen every episode of his own show.
Really?
I've not seen this episode. I wasn't there. I was out of town for the read.
Oh.
I was at. I didn't go to the mix. I didn't look through the editing. I have never seen this. So that jockey thing, that was notorious. That was great.
Oddly enough, it seems that none of this artwork has been used outside of its intended purpose. The front and back covers of the late 90s Best of the Simpsons VHSs, made for releases of seasons 1 through 3, have pieces that look a lot cleaner than the promos originally made for those seasons. On their own, these are a cool glimpse into what episodes like Bart the General or Krusty Gets Busted could have looked like if produced around seasons 8 through 10. Ooh, an elusive Matt Groening shirt Bart. I shall add him to my collection of Rare Barts. Episode guidebooks use original, simplified drawings that look like they would have appeared on merchandise. Anything that resembles a promo in the calendars I have is actually a redraw. Same goes for the images featured in the booklets for the season DVD releases. A few are actually redrawn or recolored versions of existing promos, with added digital shading. I dig how both the DVDs and the episode guidebooks give everything a uniform look, sometimes alongside extra character bios or props and gags. Otherwise, these latter two formats don't interest me too much for being closer to redrawn screenshots and not standing on their own. If you want some context for how this image fits into the episode, just look anywhere else. I think these pieces look the best when cropped and shrunken down into a small square. Otherwise, you get Lisa staring at this box of puppies in this minimalist feel. For the first couple of years, Simpsons promos didn't have a consistent format or style. Sometimes they'd just be a simple drawing of a character or two with a plain background that tells you everything you need to know, like this one for Lisa's pony. Sometimes they capture a key moment that shows off the premise, like Homer chasing a naked Bart as the rest of the family sits in silence. That's what Bart the Genius is all about, apparently. Sometimes you get a tableau showing off a character's new persona and the guest stars, which kind of became the norm around season 4, as Homer's odd jobs and celebrity cameos came to the forefront. These remind me of the early Bongo Comics covers, just with muted colors and more crowded layouts. The most iconic one from this era is probably for Treehouse of Horror 2. Would make for a sick blacklight poster. A personal standout is Marge on the Lam. Most of its scenes with Marge and Ruth Powers take place at night, so I dig the big, bright Ripley sky in the promo to sell the Thelma and Louise parody. I tend to prefer the ones that aim to craft a specific tone, like with how Sideshow Bob menacingly towers over Bart in the Cape Fear promo. I gotta say, Bart is really going through it in season 3. His dog is cheating on him, his nemesis is cheating on him, he is about to die. I wish I felt bad for the kid, but he's really ugly facing forward. Maybe Bart fares better in season 4. Wait, when did it happen? The Who Shot Mr. Burns two-parter that ended season 6 and started season 7 was the biggest event The Simpsons had seen thus far, backed by a massive marketing campaign.
Mr. Burns is shot.
Woohoo!
As a result, this one had loads of promos, depicting all of Springfield rallying against Mr. Burns to show that everyone was a suspect in this mystery. They play around with colors and silhouettes more than usual. Some are pretty hype, some make me ask why Miss Hoover is packing heat. Very cool that they ended up making a beach towel out of this drawing of Mr. Burns' shot corpse. Shot body? Wait, it's not a corpse, he's still alive. Well, he is Mr. Burns. How are they going to top this with the promos for the next season? How did they make one of my favorite episodes look so boring? Some Season 8 promos did take after Who Shot Mr. Burns by adopting more abstract backgrounds, like in the one for the Springfield Files. Maybe it's the washed out colors or occasional shadows, but I think these promos were done on cells for the first 10 seasons or so. I wonder if that was how they constructed these pieces for Homerpalooza, where Homer annoys 3 sets of performers while remaining in the same pose. By season 11, the line work and coloring looks cleaner and more digital, complete with gradient shading. It would take 3 more years for the series to switch over to being animated with digital ink and paint. The promos are now peeking into the show's future, although it never came to look nearly as uncanny as this pic of Bart and his new BFF, Gary Coleman. Around season 12, the level of detail and the color and backgrounds has now become on par with the pieces found in the DVDs, including in the whitewashed version of the aforementioned hardest picture ever. The facial expressions have been downplayed to be more strictly on model, though there's still plenty of fun and creative compositions. Except for this one where Snake Smithers ruined the symmetry! I can't help but feel a little cheated whenever they recycle or recolor a Homer pose, or when a promo has very little to do with what happens in an episode. The Bart Wants What It Wants is framed as the episode where the Simpsons are going to Canada. The Simpsons are in Canada for 4 minutes. To be fair, there are times when I do wish the promos were actually misleading. March fans, you might want to skip season 14. This is a promo for a season 16 episode. This is what that episode looks like. This is a promo for a season 34 episode. This is what that episode looks like. The art style stagnation reminds me of this petty issue that I had with The Simpsons, where ever since it transitioned to HD, the series has more or less looked the same for 15 years, not having gone through any new animation innovations. From a glance, you can't tell episodes from the 2010s and the 2020s apart, like you can with prior decades. The long-term consistency of these promos makes that task even harder, but once again, I appreciate the attempt to create a uniform art style for the entire franchise. They're a glimpse into a world where episodes were always produced in HD, with abundant time and resources. It's wild to watch 20-year-old episodes that tried their hardest to look like they were done on cells, and then the promos are like, what? No. This one came out last week. When it comes to the layout of promos from the 2000s, they're kind of business as usual in terms of what they're highlighting, besides a few pieces that generally promote the series. I could complain about some of the posing, like Milhouse hitting the gritty, but lest we forget that some are identical to the ones I strike in every video. A few from this period have become iconic in their own right. The ones for I Am Furious Yellow, Simple Simpson, the Mook, the Chief, the Wife, and her Homer might be more well known than their episodes. Alongside pieces showing off the premises, we started to get artwork of just the guest star in front of a gradient. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen most of these episodes in about a decade, but I cannot for the life of me remember who most of these celebrities are supposed to be, especially in the group photos. Way too many of these present the model sheet poses of white men staring you down. Sometimes the colors are so washed out that the characters almost look Caucasian. The ones that awkwardly drop one of the Simpsons in the middle of far more realistic and detailed designs are among my favorites. Right next to this one where they just redrew everyone around Moe and his bar counter. It can be confusing when they mix caricatures of guests with characters played by guests, like in this nasty reminder that Stephen Sondheim and Andy Dick were in the same episode. Oh, sorry for the Rudy Giuliani jump scare, everyone. I thought it would be preferable to a Black Homer jump scare. I previously mentioned the posters that arrived with every new Trios of Horror, starting with the 15th entry. But a few years later, we started to get similar artwork for events or anthology episodes, like Love Springfieldian Style, The Saga of Carl, or Homerland. In that one, Homer once again tries to fade out of reality. Posters have gone on to become the norm, as between seasons 22 and 23, we went from having promos for nearly every episode to less than half, and the number would continue to decrease. They've actually become a part of Matt Groening and current showrunner Matt Selman's approach to crafting new story concepts. I asked fellow YouTuber Employee Million to read the following quote, and he provided 2 takes, one with his native New Zealand accent and one with an American accent. See if you can spot the difference.
Make sure that every episode is poster-worthy. What is the big, exciting visual idea that is unique to that episode that makes it special? So you don't just turn on The Simpsons and say, they're in the kitchen or they're in the living room. Make sure that every episode is poster-worthy. What is the big, exciting visual idea that is unique to that episode that makes it special? So you don't just turn on The Simpsons and say, they're in the kitchen or they're in the living room.
Recent episodes have parodied classic posters or franchise styles to utilize tiles or stained glass to fit the episode's tone or topics. These are the kinds of pieces I love to have physical copies of, pushing the shading and color palettes in ways that the show never would. The classic promo style still lives on through Disney+. Big fan of the key art created for the launch of Season 33 on the service, celebrating all the new outfits the cast donned. Every now and then, they still bust out the old celebrity model sheets to publicize guest roles from Snoop Dogg, RZA and Common, Ed Sheeran, Kevin Feige, and Lizzo. Crazy lineup. Although I'm glad that they've gone in a more creative direction than what were basically glorified screenshot redraws that are kind of redundant with what the cartoon looks like today, I will miss getting so much original artwork from The Simpsons that isn't in The Simpsons. I'm kind of wondering how other fans feel about these promos. What other person will be willing to talk at length about Simpsons images?
Hey Nick, thanks for having me on to talk at length about Simpsons images. I have to admit, this is one of those topics I had never really thought much about before. I had seen a bunch of them randomly over the years, but had never really looked at them, you know? And I was surprised how much they varied from episode to episode, even within the same season. Many of my personal favorites are from the early years of the show, as many of the iconic images give the longtime fans the nostalgic warm fuzzies. Aww, it's Dancin' Homer. It's the family shock therapy scene. It's Bart dancing with Laura Powers, or looking at his soldiers in his war against Nelson. Wow, Hockey Lisa's a badass. Even some of the later season stuff can fall in the iconic category. Sometimes just picking a dynamic pose from an episode is good enough for me. Like, look at the staging of The Otto Show, with the big droopy devil overhead. The Sideshow Bob examples like Cape Fear or the Bob Next Door, or the glowy alien from the Springfield Files. Honestly, most of the Treehouse of Horror promo images are fantastic. The later seasons pivoted to these big cinematic posters, and they are generally great. Not all of the segments are amazing, of course, but they're presented so dynamically, they do make me excited to watch them. Maybe their Stranger Things parody won't be disappointing on this rewatch. Maybe I'm just a sucker for movie posters, because I like most of the non-Treehouse ones too, like The Saga of Carl, Bart the Bad Guy, and The Mook the Chef, the Wife, and Her Homer. Probably my favorite of the later years posters is A Serious Flanders. So good. Also, shout out to this one from Love Springfieldian Style. I am mostly indifferent to the episode itself, but A+ promo image. I really appreciate those examples where they create a whole separate piece of art, separate from the episode. Like this evolution of Homer from the monkey suit. Not all of the promo images are winners, however. There's a bunch of them that look rather boring, having a lot of static color backgrounds and negative space. Unky Herb lives in an empty void because Herb Powell sucks. Some of the promos are just scenes from the episodes, but are not all that memorable. When I think of Homer Alone, I think of Homer trying to feed Maggie. Remember when Moe was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for 20 seconds? I do enjoy how utterly bizarre some of these examples are, either in what they picked or how non-representative of the episode it is. Like for Dog of Death, they went with this image. Homer Goes to College is an episode about Homer getting a pig drunk. Why is Lisa wearing Mr. Burns' suit for Lisa's pony? These pics from Sweet Seymour's Badass Song and The Homer They Fall kinda represent the episode, but make it look like a totally different character dynamic. Probably my favorite in the weird category is Itchy and Scratchy the movie, because, well, you already saw it. Definitely my least favorites are the celebrity preview images. They can honestly be pretty boring. They have to exist because, you know, promo, but a lot of them can be fairly boring once you've already seen their episodes. We don't have to hype ourselves up for Bob Hope, Tom Jones, and NSYNC now. I like how they put Kid Rock on Homer's t-shirt here, just to make it clear. Not all of the celebrity images age poorly. Mr. Plow and the Monorail episodes are examples of it done right. Or Bart with Conan O'Brien, and Homer getting beat up by U2. The best of these highlight the celebrities in the context of what the episode is about. It's a good balance. I would ramble on for ages about these random episode promos if you'll let me. Mostly, I want to find out why so many of these images are so dang weird.
Thanks, Real Jimmy. Here are my favorite miscellaneous notes from his section that he sent me. Cool barrels. So glowy. Ominous. Big sandwich. Fetish. Am I forgetting anything else to put in this video? Oh, there we go.